What's going on, fellas? Alright, guys, so 9 times out of 10, if you're watching this video, it's because you have goals and you have things you want out of life. Maybe you don't have a purpose yet and you're looking for it, or maybe you already found your purpose and you're kind of at a plateau right now. Alright, G, and I know it. G, look, I know you've been working hard. I know you've been praying. I know you've been staying consistent. And life is not really turning out how you expected at this moment. Alright? I need you to understand that sometimes delay doesn't mean rejection. Sometimes delay doesn't mean you're broken or you have something wrong with you or you need to learn new stuff. Sometimes, G, especially if you're on course and you're aligned, sometimes delay is divine. Sometimes it's not a no, it's a setup for what you got coming up next. God can only trust you with something if he know you can handle this little bitty stage you're at. I'm not minimizing your struggles. I'm just letting you know, G, there's a lot more there for you if you just stay aligned and stay focused. All right, G, so I need you guys to take notes and pay attention because this is going to be very important, especially if you feel stuck, especially if you feel behind. I just need you to understand, G, that quitting is not an option. If you already saw your goal, G, that thought, I'm going to show you how this works, all right? If you ever saw that goal, that thought, that dream, that fulfillment, that abundance, that utopian life you dream of, if you already saw it, you fucked up because you've been exposed to it. So quitting is not an option, all right, G? So I'm going to teach you how to stay on track today. And this is not a lesson. I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm just going to guide you along the way. And then I'm going to let go of your hand and you can take care of the rest, all right, fellas? Let's get right into it. Now, first thing I want you to understand about life, G, and I think you already know this, but we got to reiterate it for the people in the back. Life is, all right, G, the results you get out of life, your current life, everything you have in front of you, everything you don't have in front of you, it's only a mirror of your thoughts. Life, what you have, what you don't have in front of you, is only a mirror of your subconscious. Life is only a mirror of how you actually feel, not what you want, not your intentions, but what you actually believe, your convictions, not your desires, what you actually believe. See, this is the thing about the mind. The mind is very neutral. It doesn't care what you give it. It doesn't care what you tell it. It only responds to what you believe to be true. So you can tell yourself, gee, pay attention. We're starting from your thoughts, all right? This is the first part, your thoughts. If you tell yourself and you have a thought that you don't deserve to be great, you will get the results of that thought. All right, fellas? But that's the first part. But let me help you understand something. Life is only a mirror of what you put in. Meaning, life is a mirror of your discipline. All right, G? It's like a plant. When we put a plant in the ground, which it starts off as a seed. All right, G? That is your thoughts. You have a thought. You have an idea. I want to be rich. I want to be successful. I want a beautiful woman. I want $1 million. I want to be in the best shape of my life. I want friends that I can trust. I want a business. Whatever the thought is, G, that's the seed. Once you think it, it goes in the fucking ground. So whatever you put in, you will get out of life. But it doesn't stop with your thoughts. That's just the first part. But what you need to understand is life, G, is only, I had to tell you this first. I got to prep you first, all right, G? Life is only a mirror of what you put in. And it starts with your thoughts. All right, fellas? So we put the seed in the ground, G. We planting. Because that's all abundance is. It's harvest. But it starts with planting. If you plant abundance, you reap abundance. You harvest abundance. If you plant lack and scarcity, what I mean by planting lack and scarcity, a lot of men are working hard. But when you're working hard, you're moving with bad intentions. Or you don't believe that you're going to actually be successful. So this seed that you're planting is not a seed of abundance. It's a seed of scarcity. That's why by the time it grows, which every plant grows, especially if you water it, by the time it grows, it's not what you want. It's a mirror of a life that you don't want. And it all started with your thoughts. All right, G? Now, This is the thing about planting. All right, fellas. When you plant, you're going to get something, especially if you water it, you take care of it, you put it in the sun. What's watering? What's take care of it? Gee, when you have a thought, all right, you have an idea. You can't just have the thought, tell the world, post it on your vision board, write your goals down, and then it just magically happen. That's not manifestation. Manifestation is digging a hole up in the ground, all right, G, putting a seed in it, putting the dirt back on top, and then putting some water on that shit, and then letting the roots grow inside the soil. All right, fellas, this is what you guys got to understand about delay. You think because you planted a seed, you planted a thought, you think that because you can't see the plant coming out the ground yet, you think nothing is happening. Gee, pay attention. Roots have to connect to the ground. You ever pull a plant, you ever put a weed out the ground? The weed just don't come from the surface. It's actually kind of hard to pull out because there's roots in the ground, all right, G? The roots are your emotions, all right, fellas? You have to understand, everything you want out of life, you can't just think it. You have to tie an emotion to it. What is emotion? Emotion is desire. Emotion is I really fucking want it. The only way you get to do that is these roots. See, when you have friendships, G, there are surface level. I'm just giving you an example. There are things called surface level friendships where they're built just only on the surface. So the moment something happens and the wind blows, the plant gets knocked away. The friendship gets thrown off and it gets tarnished and it gets strained. Because the friendship wasn't built from foundational shit. From root shit, all right? Real shit. Like we really been through shit. Like you called me at 3 a.m. because you were stranded on the side of the road 2 hours away. And I came and picked you up and we built a bond. And we drove 2 hours back talking and laughing and shit. That's the root work. So when it comes to your mind, G, you got to understand, bro. You got to attach yourself emotionally to your goal. G, you can't be casual about your goals, G. First of all, it's too competitive these days. So whatever you want, you got to understand. It's not that you want it. It's not that you're planting. There's a bunch of people planting too. And they're trying to take up the space. And a lot of you guys are not planting enough. That's why people just running over your shit, outpacing you, outworking you. And you can't figure out why. And you can't figure out that it takes more than just thinking it. You can't think your way. I know they say think and grow rich. You have to think and grow. Think and grow. All right, G? So, what you got to understand, what these roots represent. G, if you didn't know already, fellas, this right here, that's the ground. All right, G? That's the ground. This is a seed. These are roots. What these roots represent is the root work. These roots represent that dreams, goals, what you want out of life, results, abundance, it doesn't come instantly. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. So when you plant your shit, you water it, you give it some sun, you go inside, you come back a few days later and you see nothing. Fellas, there is things happening. All right. There are things happening because you consistently watering and planting your goal. Delay does not mean rejection. It's divine alignment. It's divine development. A plant has to grow a certain way. You can't warp the system and say, I want my plant to just start growing from here so I can start seeing results. No, G, you got to get the roots in first. And then you'll see some little small coming out the ground, a little stub coming out. All right, whether you planted a tree, a whole fucking garden, just a little tulip, whatever the fuck it is, G, at some point you will see something. But you got to put the thought behind it. You got to tie some emotion behind it. Now watch how this shit work. Life, guys, you got to understand. Life moves in seasons. All right, G, I don't care how much work you done put in. I don't care how much self-development you did. I don't care how spiritually awakened you are. G, I don't give a shit what you do. All right, you can be a goddamn full-blown prophet. It don't matter. Life moves in seasons. All right, there's fall, there's winter, and then spring, and then summer, and then it keeps going. All right, life moves in cycles. Everything moves in seasons. Fellas, what you got to understand is there's a season called the fall. All right, and then there's another one called the spring. All right, G, and what you got to understand in the fall is boring. It's dark, it's boring, it's windy. Sometimes it might rain. It's a little bit of color, but not as much as the spring. Nature ain't really popping off in the fall like it's doing in the spring. The spring represents harvest, all right, G? The spring represents abundance, prosperity. G, the butterflies out, the birds are out. You see little reindeers, little bunny rabbits, G. Everything is just flowing. The water is fresh too. But in the fall, when you grinding, when you in the dark, when you doing the root work, all right, fellas, that's what a lot of people run from. All right, guys, you got to understand, fellas, this is usually where you face the delay. All right, G, and you putting in all this work and you don't understand that it's still fall. That's why nothing is happening. You're still underground. You're still putting in work. You're still developing because you're doing it the right way. You're not trying to shortcut shit like most men today. You're not trying to get microwave blessings like most people today. You understand that it takes time. There are seasons in life. All right, G, so let me show you how this works. You put in this work in the fall. When the delay happens, all right, G, down here where it's all dark and gloomy. And then at some point, the winter comes. And now you really press because everything is just cold and silent. All right, G, and you just waiting and you just don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know when your time is going to come, all right, G? And then you got to understand, like I said, life moves in seasons and then the spring comes. All right, fellas, and then the blossom starts and then the birds start chirping and then that little stub come out the ground. All right, G? And then some other shit start happening. And then you start seeing little petals. And now you got a fucking sunflower, G. Why? Because you understand that life moves in seasons. You understand that life is a process, all right, G? Everything starts with a thought. And then that thought turns into an emotion. And then that emotion turns into a vibration. All right, fellas, G, you ain't get your blessing yet because you're still in this process. You're still in this hierarchy of manifestation. All right, fellas, that thought turns into an emotion. That emotion transforms into a vibration. What is a vibration? Everything moves based on its essence, based on its energy. All right, fellas, you ever notice when you drink coffee or you have a lot of caffeine, your ass is bouncing around? Why? Because your internal energy is high. So you're going to move. You're going to vibrate. That's just an example, a surface level example. But you're going to vibrate, meaning you're going to move based on a combination of the thought and emotions that you done formulated in your mind. All right, fellas? And then at that point, you're going to vibrate at a certain frequency. All right, fellas, everything has a frequency. Remember I said everything moves, but everything moves at a certain frequency. Some shit moves fast. Some shit moves slow. Some shit moves loud. Some shit moves quiet. Some shit moves chaotic. Some shit moves calm. And based on how you vibrate, what frequency you vibrate at, that's going to determine what results you get. What is the next step in the hierarchy? As you're vibrating at a certain frequency, your body is going to automatically command action. Meaning everything you do is based on how you think. If me and you walk in a room and you're skeptical of me, meaning you think I'm going to do you something crazy, like you think I'm going to attack you or something, you're going to vibrate at a certain frequency based on the thought. Not just the thought, but the emotion behind it. You had a thought that I was a threat, and then you got scared, so you vibrated at a certain frequency, so you start getting timid and on guard. Now there's friction in the room. That's where the result comes. Just gave you an example of how you got everything in your life. You had a thought. You had an emotion, you vibrated at a certain frequency, you displayed the action, and you got the outcome. All right, fellas? So, listen to me, G. Some of you guys are right here. You're just thinking about it. And you think you got a problem. You think something wrong. No, G, it's divine development. You just being planted. You just poured a seed in the ground, all right? Or maybe a few seeds. I don't know. You maybe got a few ideas. Delay does not always mean you're behind, G. All right? Some of you guys hit me up, G. You 21 years old, and you like, KD, bro, I feel like I'm behind. G, I understand. You a man. You're supposed to feel like that. But why do you feel like you're behind? And then you say, because I look up to guys who are 10, 15, 20 years older than me, got 20 years more experience, got 20 years more pain, 20 years more struggle, 20 years more knowledge, 20 years more wisdom, and you fucked up because you ain't where they supposed to be. G, you ain't even got a seed yet, bro. All right, fellas. G, you still spitting out duck water, G. All right, G, you still drinking Similac at this point. So take your time. All right, fellas, there's a time and place for everything. And some things, it only takes wisdom, time, and experience to get there. Now, my last point. I want to tell you guys this. Sometimes, G, the reason why you're not where you want to be yet is because God knows that if he gave it to you right now, you would take the credit for it. Pay attention. He knows that if you got it right now, you got your goal, you got your blessing right now, whatever, your $1 million, your woman or whatever, because your ego is so fucked up, because you're so narcissistic, because you haven't went through this process of development, you're going to take the credit for it and you're going to say it was you. You're going to say you got it done because of all the work you did. You haven't been broken yet. You haven't had to wait. You just got blessed with something. It's like you just hit a crypto pump. You just got blessed with something, so you think it was because of you. Gee, when you have to go through this nurturing process, you have no choice but to blame it on God, G. A lot of you guys have been wondering why the content of my content has changed. Like why the structure and the dialogue and the shit I talk about has changed. Gee, I have no choice but to blame God for all the shit G, even me talking right now, G. All right, I'm just a vessel at this point when I hop on this camera. All right, fellas, so you got to understand, sometimes it's divine development, G. Sometimes God is delaying you so that once you get it, you get to tell people it was him that did it. Because this is what happens. You plant the seed, right? Then you go into the fall and nothing's happening. He's dragging you along. Gee, God is literally dragging his feet. You asking him for shit. And he like, yeah, I got it. And you like, God, I know you hit me like I heard you, G. I got it. And then he turned his head and start whistling and doing something else. And you think he ain't paying attention. No, G, he trying to break you down so you can drop all that other external shit and then look at him and say, all right, God, I'm going to let you take care of it this time. And then he going to be like, damn, G, I've been waiting on you. All right, this how you do it. And then you go through the process, get what you want. By the time you get what you want, people ask you how you got it. And then all you can say is, it was God. God did it. Why? Because you went through, because you know that's the only way you're going to be able to get what you want. So when you have these thoughts, pay attention. These thoughts have to be positive. You have to think these thoughts with grace. These thoughts have to be aligned with what's good. Not your dark ass desires, not your selfish ass desires. Because if your desires, if the end result of your desires are not helping someone else, or not helping you get closer connected to God, G, it ain't gonna work. And based on the clarity of those thoughts, an emotion is gonna be tied to it, and then the rest follows itself. All right, fellas, so more of the story. Delay. G, why would you give up? Why would you plant, get some roots in the ground, the shit start growing to about right there, and then why? Why would you put in all that work, that money, that effort, that pain? You done lost friends, you done lost your girlfriend, you done lost a bunch of shit. You done gave up old habits, you done did all this deep work, and then you give up. It don't make no sense. So like I said, G, once you put the glasses on, you can no longer take them off. Once you see the truth, once God shows you what the fuck he got for you, G, if you turn back, G, I don't know what's going to happen to you, all right? G, turning back is worse than you not actually achieving what you want. I'd rather you try hard as fuck and not get it than you turn back to the old you and you give up on it. All right, fellas? So, I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. All right, remember, G, delay sometimes. It's only divine development from God. So do not give up. Quitting is not an option. All right, G? Appreciate you for tuning in, man. Share this video with a homeboy that this will help out. It's your boy, KD. We out here, baby.